I think we're missing something.
Please come on in and take your seats, folks. We're about to get started. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Hudson Mayoral Primary Debate. I'm Cameron Melville, co-founder of Indivisible CD19 New York. We've been producing events, marches, rallies since Donald Trump became president. So when we heard that there would be a primary in the Hudson mayoral election, our first thought was to produce a debate so that voters could make informed decisions on primary day, June 25th. Our intention has been to offer a public service, facilitate fairly and transparently, and let the candidates and their campaigns speak for themselves. If you didn't take literature from the campaigns on your way in, it'll be there on the tables in the lobby on your way out. There also might be some cold pizza somewhere. The debate will begin with two-minute opening statements from each candidate. A coin toss will determine the order of opening and closing statements. Roughly 10 questions will be asked and answered, 2 each from the moderators and 6 chosen from public submissions, including questions submitted in the question box tonight. If there is more time, there will be more questions. Answers will be 2 minutes long, followed by 1-minute rebuttals. The debate will end after 5-minute closing statements at 7:30. I'd like to thank WGXC 90.FM for broadcasting the debate live. I'd also like to thank my partners in Indivisible CD19, Randall Martin, for the sound system and live stream video. Johnny Ortiz, our organizer-in-chief, and IMBY, our producing partner. We would all like to thank the moderators, Mary Dempsey, executive editor of the Register Star, and Carrie Teasdale, editor and publisher of the Columbia paper. You, audience of concern, soon to be informed citizens. And last and most important, our candidates, incumbent Mayor Rick Rector and challenger Ward Alderman Kamal Johnson. Let the debate begin. I have a coin. Who's calling?
Go ahead, Kamal.
Heads.
Heads it is. Yeah.
I'll let the start. I guess I'm starting.
I don't think is this on?
Opening?
I think we need to tell you that the timer is right there.
Yeah, no, it's not 2 minutes. All right.
So, when you're ready.
All right, I'm ready. I want to welcome everyone tonight. My name is Kamal Johnson. I'm the first ward alderman. I want to thank everyone for being in the building tonight. This is a very exciting moment for me. I want to give a shout out to the incumbent who let me know that a last minute change of rules said that we could not bring in notes, and then the incumbent shows up with notes. So that's an interesting way to start this thing. But I also, want to tell you a little bit about myself. Thank you to the moderators. I actually used to work for the Register Star. I was a paper boy. That was my first job. And then at the same time, I also worked for Upper Hudson Planned Parenthood. And that's where I got my comfort level. Don't waste my time, though. And that's where I got my comfort level to speak in public, because if you can speak as a teenager about contraception and women's rights and things like that to other teenagers, you can talk about literally anything with anyone. From there, my home life, this is usually the part where the candidates say, my mom was a teacher, my dad was a farmer. My home life was a lot different than that. My dad was shot before I was born, and he dealt with the effects of that shooting for much of my early life till he passed away when I was 5 years old. My mom was on drugs for a lot of my early life. And, when I first started to run, people were saying, it's gonna be a hard job. Are you up for it? And the way I look at it is, life is hard. And if I was able to make it through all of that, then I'll be able to make it through this. And I'm more than happy to be right here, right now, after everything that I've been through, running for mayor in the city that I grew up in. So thank you for everyone.
Thank you, Kamal. Thank you very much for participating. That little jab there. I don't have any notes at the podium. I want to thank everybody for being here, the audience especially, CD19 for making this happen, our two moderators, and lousy microphone that I'll hold, and all the volunteers that have made this happen. Wow. It has been the greatest privilege to be your mayor for the past year and a half, and tonight I'm going to humbly ask for another 2-year term, and hopefully give you the reasons why I should have that 2-year term. 2 years is not enough time. I've been visiting Hudson. I wasn't born here, but I've been visiting Hudson for over 30 years. And over those 30-year periods, I watched this town change immensely. In 2009, I decided this is where I want to live, and this is where I want to make my home. Probably for the rest of my life. I love this town so much. Prior to moving to Hudson, I spent 35 years in the fashion retail business, where out of college I went to work for Neiman Marcus, became the youngest vice president of Neiman Marcus, moved to New York City, became the senior vice president of Bergdorf Goodman, went to work for Calvin Klein as corporate president of retail and retail development, became president of Isaac Mizrahi, division of Chanel, and set up a very nice little consulting business predominantly for European designers. When I finally moved full-time to Hudson, I decided that I wanted to do something and give something back to the community. I was very lucky to have been named to the position on the Historic Preservation Commission. I was chairman for 5 years and served on it for 6. I became alderman in 2015 by someone pulling out because they had to move for a job. I was elected 6 months later. I served on the police, economic development, where I chaired finance, and I have enjoyed serving this community. I look forward to another 2 years, and I look forward to a very healthy and productive, and I hope, learning debate for us both. Thank you.
The first question, is this on? The first question goes to Alderman Johnson. In your press release, when you announced your run for mayor, you cited something, you said you were going to pursue economic and social justice. Can you give us a brief definition of what you mean by that term and what it would take to achieve those goals in the city?
Yeah, thank you. That's a great question. To me, economic and social justice means if you look around, there's a lot of people in here with the slogan AHOD on their shirt. And that means like all hands on deck. And that's really what it has to be right now in our city for us to achieve that. We have to, there's different things that are happening in our city where the youth, our social, emotional needs of the youth are not being met. There's a huge LGBT community that needs are not being met. And we really need to focus on getting everybody together. I know the incumbent has, his slogan is One Hudson, but I have no idea what that One Hudson is. And in 2 years, I haven't seen One Hudson come together. We're actually more divided than we've ever been. So for me, it's important to speak for the people that don't have a voice. There's a lot of people in this room today, but there's a lot more that couldn't make it here. And even with the assessments and different things like that that happened in our city, we didn't speak for everyone in the community. There were the elderly that they weren't able to grieve or different things like that because they didn't have the proper internet. There was, a Bengali population that there was no translation services available for. So that's what social justice means, is standing up for everyone, regardless of color, regardless of sexuality, and bringing them together, all hands on deck. Thank you.
Sure, thank you. I think One Hudson reflects exactly what you're talking about. Bringing the community together, the diversity of this community, and coming to some common ground that we can all find. You mentioned a variety of issues that are going on in the city, Kamal, all of which we see. We recognize the social issues, the disenfranchised, a community that's changed greatly and so fast. And there are several people that have not enjoyed it. But I've heard no substantive ways to improve it. It's so easy to point out the problems. It's exceptionally easy to bring in a divisive content to the conversation. But coming up with real answers and real solutions is what we're all about. And I do think that the city is a little bit better off, candidly. And I do believe in One Hudson. I will continue to talk about One Hudson because I think it reflects exactly what you talked about.
Well, no, not at this point. You can use time other time, but we're going to go on to a question for the mayor.
This is for the mayor and for the alderman. Hudson is faced with ever-increasing costs to city services, and taxpayers are seeing higher costs of living while wages, for the most part, remain stagnant or are going down. As mayor, what would you do to control spending, increase revenues, and bring industry to the area so people can make more money?
Thank you. That's one of the biggest challenges of the mayor. And yes, Hudson has enjoyed great success. Actually, the jobs have increased in Hudson during the past 5 years with the entrance of this incredible hospitality industry. So there are more jobs in Hudson than there were probably 5 years ago. I think it's important when you talk about bringing new businesses in and developing economic development within the city is to create an atmosphere where both the citizens and outside developers are comfortable in coming into a community that functions, a community that is fair. As you all know, and we'll talk about probably the assessments later on, the whole idea of an assessment is to bring fairness and equality to the entire town. And that's the process that we're going through. So I can't wave a magic wand and promise the jobs are coming in. We can make sure that the environment is conducive to developers and business people wanting to come into our city. Additionally, as far as jobs go, there's been a lot of talk about the hospitality or the tourism industry. Listen, it's an industry that we're lucky to have. It's an industry that we embrace. It's additional incredible revenue streams, as we've seen, and even in the taxes that we put on, the fines for the lodging tax that we recently implemented. So I think that we're on the right track. We're on steady feet now. Again, I will say it is up to all of us to maintain and create an environment where people are comfortable. People are comfortable coming here, raising their families. People are comfortable coming here, creating a business and investing in the community. And I think.
Thank you.
I think we don't have to wave a magic wand for jobs to be available. When I first announced my candidacy, I was reached out by a gentleman who runs a rehabilitation center outside of Hudson. And he came to me and he said, you know, I've reached out to the current mayor many times to try to bolster a partnership with the city or any type of nonprofit where you guys can play a liaison with. And he said, right now there's a lot of people in our city who are looking for the nursing program, LPN, which is a licensed practical nurse. And he said, we're willing to, for free, provide the instructor for that. We just need a place to do it. And those salaries start at $52,000. And that's something that we can do with little of a lift. All we have to do is actually go out and do the work and be a liaison for people. We also have the DRI coming up. And if you know state grants, which I have a lot of experience in. Time?
Alderman Johnson, let's talk about drugs, illicit drugs, and possibly gang violence.
Yeah.
Hudson, like most cities, has a problem. But is there something that is not being done, that can be done to address the problem? And is there something that you would do as mayor?
Yes, and great question. Being the only candidate on this stage with actual experience in prevention and recovery services, I can tell you that they'll say the line over and over, we can't arrest our way out of this. But what we can do is educate our way out of this, and we can start by those that are our youth. And one of the things that I've done is I ran a program where we gave out scholarships, and two students from our city received $10,000 scholarships in that program. And what they learned is the effects of drugs on the adolescent brain. What they learned was the effects of nicotine addiction, drug addiction, and the effects of that on the body. Right now we have a thing called Juul that's sweeping, through our city. And it's pretty dangerous because you can't really detect, there's no smell or different things like that. And we have to educate our kids about this, especially with marijuana coming in and different things like that. So we have to look at this from a different lens. We have to provide services. There's a prevention committee that the Department of Health does, where they do a ton of work, and we have to partner with them on the city to find out. They're working on what is it called? A manual, basically, of all the services in Hudson for recovery. And we need to distribute that in places where it can be available for people. So it has to be something that, as a city, we take hold of and we don't let go. Thank you.
Do you want to respond?
Thank you. While I have not been involved in recovery programs here in the city of Hudson, I've witnessed the drug abuse and the ills that come with drugs through my family members. I've had a nephew that died, one nephew that's been in and out of both rehab and jail. So it strikes home. And the opioid crisis is one factor, and it's a huge factor. And I'm constantly amazed throughout walking through the community of recognizing or seeing people that I think are functioning normal, but they're actually on some sort of drugs. I think we can do better as a community. It is education. Kamal is absolutely right. It's education. It starts at our youth, but it's also giving people a leg up and helping them through the recovery. We are not doing nearly enough as a group of citizens in the recovery process, and while that's predominantly a county issue, I would like to see us do a lot more.
Hudson is facing an affordable housing crisis. Recently, the Hudson Housing Authority proposed a $55 million development project in part to revitalize Bliss Towers and to build new affordable housing facility at the corner of State and 2nd Streets. The plan was pulled in part because it did not address a key part of the city's strategic housing action plan, which calls for providing affordable housing throughout the city. If elected, how would you address affordable housing in the city?
Well, I continually, what you just said is pretty much is what happened. Our Hudson Housing Authority initially got a grant for $800,000 to build a new facility that I was very supportive of across the street from Bliss and State Street. That ultimately morphed into a much bigger picture that I found that I said publicly and got a lot of criticism for it. This is in contradiction to the strategic housing plan that the City of Hudson adapted. Not only did the City of Hudson adapt the program, they put it through the Common Council to the Committee of the Housing and Transportation Committee as a guideline for all future housing. The project that was ultimately presented by the developer for Hudson Housing Authority, again, was in contradiction of what we had agreed to as a city. They have subsequently pulled back. They will be coming back. I was very thrilled about this new unit that they were doing because I ultimately introduced them to our daycare center, knowing that we could do a better job with how we handle daycare, put the daycare center into this new project. But between the developers and the members of the HHA, things changed dramatically. Hudson housing is an issue. Affordable housing is an issue in every city that people want to live in. And what we can do is, first of all, I agree, I really firmly believe that scattered housing is an incredibly important part of it. And I will support that and pursue that both with the Hudson Housing Authority and developers that are interested in coming in. And there are developers. Galvin, for instance, has announced that they're willing to do 20 units. And there are other people, there are other facilities. So, I will do whatever I can to foster the environment for a developer or an individual or HHA to come in and do right by good affordable housing.
Now, there was a housing needs assessment that was done, and in that assessment, there were strategies on how to bring housing to Hudson. That has not been looked at all. And what we need to do is, and what I would do in my first 180 days as mayor, is look into making things shovel ready so that developers come in and they see exactly what the soil is, what they need to do so that we're cutting the time for people to come in and develop. We also need to look into inclusionary zoning. There's a lot of vacant buildings around this city, and we need to look into developing them and adding on that they have to specify certain units that are affordable for people. And when I say affordable, I don't mean just subsidized. I mean for people that are working class. One thing that we've done in the past few years is abandon the working class.
We now turn to the questions that we have received from the audience, and we'll get to a few of them now. I'll try to interpret some of what's said because they're a little long, or at least one is, and it has to do with housing. So let's go back to that subject for a moment. And they said, the person who wrote the question said, there are very few options available in Hudson for a group of its citizens who now live in multi-storied houses and who may need eventually to live with homes without steps, no lofts or apartments. And how will their needs be included in Hudson's planning for the future?
If I understand the question correctly, I believe they're asking about ADA compliances for...
Well, it's not stated specifically. It's just housing that is appropriate for people who have difficulties going up and down stairs or other obstacles that might be there. So thought given to special populations or particular populations.
Aging
that need to be helped.
Yeah.
In aging, yes.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that, as mayor, we need to look into. And I'm not a mayor that's going to have all the answers, but I'm a mayor that would know to look for help and know when to ask and to research. For that particular question, I'm not sure how we would attack that issue, but with research and with the right people together and the community helping out, I believe that we can find the right answer for that.
Yes, well, that's a very interesting question because I'm worried about at some point during the years how I'm going to walk up my steps. It is housing and the ability to provide the correct housing to a multitude of people, whether it's our seniors, our disabled, our working class, or subsidized housing is part of the whole conversation about what this city can and will do about Hudson and housing within it. There are some areas that you can deal with your landlord and forcing them to, if you pay for it, to build your own. That's part of dealing with the landlord. That if you pay for it, you can build your own accessibility, and that's out there. Hudson, as you know, we're going through a kind of a review, specifically at City Hall, and we may take it further. We met with the ADA people about over 6 months ago, and we're waiting for a very long, what we hope is a very effective and thorough report about the ADA needs for the city of Hudson. That includes everything from ability to get into a house to sidewalks.
You can hold on to it because you're getting the next question.
Okay.
For the last 2 years, city officials have failed to uphold the welcome and inclusive executive order. If elected, what will you do to strengthen policies that protect and support our immigrant communities?
Well, I do not think that we failed to uphold it. I think that obviously we're learning. This was put into effect, I think, in 2017, 2018. It's not perfect, but I am extremely proud of our police department in general and the ways that they've handled it. Every time that incident has occurred, and they don't know every time an incident will occur with ICE coming into town and welcoming and friendly or the sanctuary city. But they send myself, they send Kamal, who's head of the police committee, a report of what happened, who was involved. We've in the past several months, I think that we've learned new things, and it will continually be, I hope, to learn new things. But I was one of the people that proudly voted for this, for the welcoming and inclusive resolution in City Hall. I support it to the max. I work with our police chief on a daily basis to ensure that he's supporting it. So I honestly don't think that we've failed. I think that we can improve. It's obviously it was new to Hudson. So in general, I'm proud of the way the city's handled it. And I'm proud of the way that our police chief and the entire force has handled it. And I think that after every day we get better on it. But I certainly not apologizing for anything. I congratulate the men and women of our police department for doing it correctly. Thank you.
I actually agree that we failed as a city. And I don't say that on behalf of the police department. I say that on behalf of leadership. When the head of the sanctuary movement, one of the directors, Brian McCormick, when the incumbent was sworn in, they had a conversation, and he said that we need training for officers to identify certain warrants. The mayor never followed up on that commitment to follow up with Brian McCormick for that. The mayor also, the day of the big incident, he never answered his phone to help out officers, and he put them in a situation where they were criticized because of his lack of leadership. I I actually showed up that day, and when Brian McCormick went viral, that was the only time the incumbent came and supported the movement. Because before then, he was nowhere to be found. And in those meetings, when we had after them, the mayor showed up to those meetings with no pen, no paper. And when Brian was giving him specific steps on how we can improve this as a city, he didn't have any answers. He didn't write down anything because he didn't come with a pen and paper. So that shows you that he's not committed to this. Even though he voted for it, he knew nothing about the resolution. Thank you.
We have another question from the audience, and it is that please give us your ideas for easing the increasing parking congestion. Specifically, we favor putting parking meters on the 200 block of Warren Street, and how much does the city bring in now for meters and tickets? That's the question.
I don't agree with more parking meters. I think the city is doing well right now with what we have. In the first quarter, I believe they've raised $90,000 just alone on traffic. So we don't need to punish our citizens anymore by charging them. It's hard enough to work and have to keep coming out, putting quarters in, or spending extra money. And then for downtown Union and other streets like that, we can barely find parking because everybody's running from Warren Street to park away from the meters. So we definitely don't need any more meters.
Last year, we do have a parking problem in Hudson, and it's quite obvious if you're trying to park, certainly around Warren Street. Last year, I went to our grant writers and I asked for a $3,000 study to do about the parking, especially in relationship to the $10+ million that we will be putting in the DRI. We need to know what our traffic problems are. Yes, I don't agree necessarily we need additional parking meters. We need striping below 3rd Street. I think that would greatly help. But the fact that, unfortunately, what Kamal said, a lot of our merchants are utilizing Warren Street parking, just running out and putting quarters. We have public lots that we encourage our merchants to utilize. The Warren Street parking is hopefully for visitors and people coming in to spend money to visit our shops, our restaurants, and our stores. We don't need additional meters. We probably need better control. We need a better idea of actually what we're going to be doing in the next 10 years with parking, especially with regards to what's happening with the DRI and additional building and infrastructure.
Now look at this is for the mayor to start off. Please explain the various city funds and how tax dollars flow to each of these funds.
Well, the city of Hudson has 4 budgets. The main budget is the general budget that we all know and love dearly. We also have a separate budget for water, sewer, and the cemetery. Every year, the BEA, we get together and determine, working with each department, what those specific needs are for that department. Then we blend that all together, determine what's right, what's wrong, how much we actually want to raise taxes or lower taxes. And then that's put in a decision, and we put that forward to the Common Council, and they vote on it each year, every year, which is done in the October-November period. It's a pretty easy, not always easy, but it's a pretty straightforward process as how the city does that. When we agree to the amount of money that we will need as a city, then obviously that's put forward. We have meetings with taxpayers, we have meetings with the council members. And it's always interesting to me that very few people show up at these meetings. Currently our budget is around a little under 12 million, I think it's 11.7. And that comes out of your pockets. And that's where I would like to see a lot more community involvement. But it's done every year. It's based upon a lot of our income, obviously, and the income is heavily oriented towards property taxes, and property taxes are then turned into determining what other needs we have to have as a community, and that's how we come up with it. We've been living with about a 3% budget increase over the past 2 years. Alderman?
I think it's important that we look at all the budgets and we make sure that we're getting our bang for our buck. There's a lot of money being spent in the city, and it's not really, there's no transparency from administration. And that's what I would bring to the table, is transparency and an actual relationship with the school district. Right now, the school district has a vote, and citizens are actually scared to vote for that budget because of assessments and because of the taxes that are being punished. And we need a real partnership with the school district so that we're giving voters and we're giving citizens the exact information they need to make informed votes. And that's one of the big things that we really have to do with budgets. We're dealing with a mayor who, he wanted to cut 2 lifeguards to save $2,000, but he sat and said nothing when it was proposed to spend $140,000 to brand Hudson. We have to be smarter than this.
You can use some of your time in the next question to do that. That's perfect. The time is your time. And, I think we've pretty much gone through the questions that we received. And I think it'll come back to us at this point. And one of the questions I wanted to ask, I think, is it the mayor's turn on this?
No,
Losing
it's
track.
Jamal's
Apologies.
turn. Jamal's turn.
Pardon?
You started with the mayor's turn.
Okay, then let's go there. Alderman Johnson, there are wonderful things about Hudson's recreational facilities, and there are some not so wonderful things about the recreational facilities. One in particular has come up in recent months, which is Oakdale Lake. What can you do specifically to improve the facilities there, or what would you do as mayor?
Yeah, that's a great question. And one of the things, there's a group called the Friends of Oakdale that I've been working with since they've been in fruition. And they have a great plan for Oakdale that, as mayor, I would be fully on board with. One of the things that we also have to notice is that the youth center, their budget is in charge of the entire Oakdale Lake as well. And that's something we have to do as a city, because Oakdale is falling apart. And we have the largest camp in the county that resides there. And we can't continue to overlook these things. And Oakdale has now become a priority for Hudson, which is amazing. And I want to give kudos to Tamara Adler and her group. And I want to make sure that we keep that progress going, because our facilities, our youth center and Oakdale are falling apart, and we really have to put first foot forward to make sure that they're our priority.
The question was about recreational facilities, and specifically what could be done to improve the facilities at Oakdale Lake.
Great. Listen, I agree with Paul. I totally thank Tamara for what they're doing with the Friends of Oakdale. The success of this city is by the people that are making things happen. We have 2 very vigorous organizations that are dealing with the youth department. One is the Friends of Hudson Youth, which are doing amazing things with generating funds for programming, other activities, and an incredible opportunity with Oakdale that we've all, not all of us, but many of us have seen the progress of we could do this, we could do this, we could do this. I totally support this. I think it's incredible. I love citizens initiative, and that's something that I try to foster. I've supported both groups. Back very quickly to something my opponent just said. Some of the unfortunate things are being said that just aren't true. To say that I supported $140,000 branding, that's a blatant lie. The city of Hudson passed a tourism law. The tourism said the money that will go to the tourism committee will be for marketing. And marketing is a key word, and I see marketing in a variety of different things. Marketing could be, this is what I believe, it doesn't have to be towards tourism. marketing should be looked at. Anything that enhances a visitor, a resident, or a tourist coming to Hudson. I strongly suggest that immediately we take the existing money and talk to DPW about, first of all, coming up with a study that we can improve all of our sidewalks. It's something that's way overdue. That would improve and enhance someone's coming into town. Secondly, I see some of that money going towards crosswalks. Anything that improves the quality of life for the residents, for someone visiting our community and the tourists is something I totally support. So to say it was $140,000 branding, that was never in the bill, my friend.
I don't believe that was the question.
Well, you will have time if you want to use some of your time.
And I want to clarify that. I didn't say he supported it. I said he said nothing, which he just did as well.
We're going to have one more question, and then we're going to take questions from the audience. Okay. So this is to the mayor. Would you support moving city offices, including the youth center, to JLE? Why or why not?
Yeah, listen, we're in the middle of a feasibility study, and I will support anything that makes sense. Currently, I think in 2019, Hudson is evaluating all of its real estate, and JLE is an incredibly important potential aspect of our future. The city of Hudson probably needs about 25 to 30,000 square feet, including a new youth department. JLE is approximately 90,000 square foot. What we do with the remainder, we can talk about, share it with the county. But the feasibility study that I supported, that I went through the vetting process along with the committee, I think we hired a great organization that's coming through that will give us some very good information about the real possibility of moving to JLE. And that would incorporate a new youth center and facilities for the city of Hudson. I've additionally, this past year, we've done a feasibility study on making City Hall ADA accessible. In 2019, it's amazing that we've gone year after year without providing ADA accessibility to all government facilities. When I first became mayor, I moved the parking to the ground floor from the second floor, just so anybody that came into City Hall that was able to gain access to City Hall could do everything on the main floor, including paying taxes, DPW bills, and parking, and dealing with our city clerks. So I look forward to seeing what comes about the JLE study. And we also additionally have done an appraisal on all of our buildings. It would be, obviously, and I mean this, and I've said it to Nick, and I've said it year after year, my goal is to get a new youth department. And if it means that we can do it in JLE, that would be fantastic. If we have to build a new one, Oakdale's a possibility, or other spaces within the city of Hudson. But these are things that we will be evaluating once we get all the information and start reviewing the various data that will be coming through.
Thank you. Alderman?
Yes, I would definitely encourage the youth center to be moved to JLE, but it has to be done the right way. We can't have it there with all city services, because it just wouldn't fit. It wouldn't be a right fit for our youth. And we could have things like this, youth outside, and we'll have people that are used to having their own space and saying like, oh, there's kids out here, dribbling basketballs by my car. And there was one ideal that the kids would enter from the back of the JLE. And I don't want that for our youth. I want us to have a space that we can be proud of. And one thing that we have to do is we have to make sure that our youth know what they're worth. And whether it's JLE or St. Mary's or any other of these places around the city, we have to go forward with this and make sure that our youth are a priority.
Thank you. Thank you. We're going to, we have a mic set up here. We have a little more time. As we said in the beginning, if we have time, we will field more questions. If people have a question they'd like to ask, could you please come down to the microphone?
Can you make this live? Actually, I just want to go back and give Kamal, he got cut short, unfortunately, on the timing of one of the questions. If you want to go back to the state grant issue and take another minute, please do. You're good? Okay, thank you, Kamal. All right.
2 minutes, right?
Good. Hey, how are you? Our famous, lovely ex-mayor. Did you hear?
That was quite the intro, thank you. So, to both the mayor and the alderman, can you please explain the basic civil service rules so we can all better understand how the city is required per New York State law to hire for positions and at what rate? And there is a major outcry right now for D&I in the hiring in the city. However, we know that there are roadblocks per state law. So how would you creatively work around those?
Well, with civil service, there's always a provisionary period where you can hire, but then they have to ask for a test. And then when you take that test, then once you are in the top 3, you can be hired for that position. I do have a big problem with some of these civil service positions because they don't apply to anything that the job is about. But I think for us, as a city, we need to rework how we hire and how we look at civil service being involved.
Yeah, civil service is what it is. It's been an interesting experience for me coming from the private background in dealing with the governmental agencies and civil service. Specifically, I worked very closely with the youth department in civil service in defining, because there is the truth. Some jobs are not reflective of what the actual needs are. So it's our responsibility to make sure that we are doing it correctly and giving them the correct information. Is it arduous? Yeah, dealing with any government agency becomes difficult. Can the city change the county civil service? Very doubtful. Can we work very closely with them, ensuring that whatever we're doing is that we're doing it fairly, equitable, and according to the law?
Thank you both.
Hi.
Kaya, introduce yourself.
My name is Kaya Wedman. I'm a business owner in Hudson. I would like to know, this is a Democratic primary debate, and Mayor Rector, you are also running on the Republican and conservative lines, and haven't really put that out there a lot, like your endorsement from Republicans, and also Kamal, you're also running on the Working Families Party lines. I'd like you both to explain, your relationship to those different parties.
Thank you. Excellent question.
Listen, 2 years ago, I was very lucky to have gotten the Republican, conservative, and Democratic endorsements. My opponent had the same endorsement, so I think with the exception of the conservative, you had the Republican and Democrat. I thoroughly believe in One Hudson. And One Hudson is bringing all people together. This is not we're not dealing with national issues in this community. We're dealing with day in, day out problems that we all face together collectively in a town of 2 square miles. So I will embrace anybody and everybody that wants to give me their support. I am a liberal, I'm a progressive Democrat, I have been my entire life. I have fought up and down for things that I believe in, for great principles of the Democratic Party. But at my table, everyone's invited to sit. Doesn't mean you're going to get special treatment. It doesn't mean you're getting any additional things that nobody else is getting. But your voice will be heard in my administration. And that's incredibly important to me. And that goes back to One Hudson and listening. It's important that we listen to every side of every issue. And that's something that I've done. That's something I will continue to do. I have many Republican friends. I have many conservative friends. But again, I am a Democrat, and I'm not going to stand up here and say, I'm the most progressive Democrat there is. It's not about whether you're progressive or you're conservative. It's about doing the job that's needed in a small town like Hudson.
My first campaign, I ran on all parties because I really wanted to identify with every voter. I wanted to get my name out there and I wanted to be known. And once I did that, I understood that you have to make a choice now. So I didn't go after the Republican line on this campaign. And I know that the mayor did, and that's fine. But I would wish that he would just be transparent about it, because he posted a status that said, you know, thank the Democratic Party for their great endorsement. And you didn't do the same thing with the Republicans. So I don't know if you're embarrassed by that or if you're just trying to keep that as a secret. I also was endorsed by the Working Families Party, and that's a very important endorsement for me, because I'm fighting for working families. And when I was first endorsed, and if you know Hudson politics, the Democratic committee, it's all over the place. And they were really the endorsement party that really took me under the wing and taught me how to campaign and how to be a politician and how to be for the people.
Our next question comes from Sydney Adams. She's a Hudson resident.
New topic. I belong to the Y in Greene County. I wish we had one in Columbia County. It belongs in Hudson, where people don't have to drive. The Y in Columbia County in Coxsackie is a lovely facility. It's totally integrated, black and white. You can make friends with everybody there. It's lovely. We should have something like this for our entire community, including the youth, but also the seniors, right? I mean, that is a great facility. So I'm wondering, I mean, I know you have a million things to work on, but I'm wondering if that's on anybody's list, on the back burner, whatever. It's a great facility, and it's tiny.
Is that a county facility?
It's an Albany capital, it's like the capital.
Capital District region.
What she said.
I would love a line.
Well, I mean, I think it would benefit everyone.
It absolutely
And hurt
would.
no one, and add to the youth's, you know, add more for the youth. So I'm just bringing that up to the community. And if anybody needs me to work on it, I will.
I have never heard it discussed. A Y in the city of Hudson. It's a great idea. It's probably a great idea for the county, and Hudson would be its natural place. And you mentioned additional facilities that would help and enhance the youth of our department, the seniors of our city. And the seniors of our city is something that I'd like to talk about for a quick second. We have a really nice facility for the seniors. That they utilize 5 days a week, often on the weekends if there's special events. But it's an incredible facility that we partnered with the Columbia County. Columbia County sends meals over. My opponent is head of the youth, seniors, and I believe school and education. And being the importance of our seniors in this community, have you ever visited the senior center while they're there in action and worked with them during a lunch or a moment? Because candidly, I hear you've not been there. And you know, there's a lot of emphasis on what's going on in our youth department, but very little conversation ever about the senior center.
I don't know what that had to do with YMCA, but so I would love to see that. And you know, for someone that I'm all about community programs, that would be extremely important to me. And that would be something that's extremely important to me. I want us to have a community center where there can be youth, where there can be seniors, where there can be people that come in when they need job assistance, where they can make a resume, where they can do things that will further their needs, and they can get those social emotional needs met as well, where we can have different services there like mental health, reach services, and things like that, all in one building. That would be like a dream building for me.
Julie Metz, Hudson citizen.
Hello. My question today is about Galvin, and my particular question is we have a nonprofit. Some of their properties are being taxed, some are not being taxed. They own, as I understand it, something in the neighborhood of 80 properties. One of the reasons I supported when Rick ran last time was that it was my hope that someone would put some pressure. Obviously, they own the property, can't make them not own the property, but what can be done to provide some kind of incentive or some kind of public pressure to get this organization to renovate some of these properties. I am very hesitant. I was very opposed to giving them a penny from the DRI because they have shown no follow-through whatsoever. We've watched many other buildings get renovated and apartments made available to the public, and yet these properties just sit and sit and sit forever, and it just feels like an insult, frankly, to the city. So I'd like to ask, I know, Mayor Rector, that you are acquainted with Mr. Calvin. I'd like to ask each of you what you are prepared to do to make, to put some kind of pressure here to get this organization to step up. A library is not enough. They really have to make housing available to people. We're talking today about a housing problem.
Well, Julie, you're absolutely correct. The Galvin Foundation, I don't know how many properties it ultimately is, 80 plus. And they do things in their own slow way. And being an acquaintance with them, as I am with many people, many investors, developers, or whatever in the city, I constantly am asking and pushing them. But there's little I can do. The Common Council did put through a vacancy fine. I'm not sure that's going to affect them that much. But it is frustrating. It's particularly frustrating when buildings that have been standing for quite some time have to be demolished because they've not been taken care of. And from my historic preservation, that breaks my heart. So I think that we continually must work and ask them. They are working on a plan to provide 20 plus additional housing units within some of their properties. Oftentimes, and they do pay a significant amount of taxes.
However, there are many that are not taxed.
Yeah, but they did bail out the housing resources on all those properties, and those properties are not taxed. So yes, I will continue as a citizen to push them. But honestly, as private property, there's little we can do other than hopefully all of us join together and collectively urge them to do better and quicker and faster.
I believe we are, Randall, can you give me some?
Can Kamal respond?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that we just need to have more transparency from the Galvin Foundation. They need to be at the table, and we need a spokesperson so that we know their exact plans and we know what's going on with properties so we're not out the loop. I don't think we all need to come together to get answers out of them. That's what we have leadership for. And if the leadership will not do that, then we have to remove the leadership and get someone who will get those answers for us.
Can I say one quick word?
We're at time. I mean, what do you want to do? We have a few more questions.
We have a few more questions, and actually the format should have included 1 minute rebuttals, but if you get a 1 minute rebuttal, then Kamal would get a 1 minute rebuttal to your rebuttal.
That's fine. Is that all right with you, Kamal?
Are you in agreement?
We have to do rebuttals the whole time.
Oh, it doesn't matter, we're asking you. No? Okay, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. Reverend Ed Cross, resident of Hudson.
This city is slowly but surely becoming affluent. Maybe that could be a stumbling block for our low housing. Now, the change is going to be made, but it's going to take a while. What are you going to do in the meantime? What are we supposed to do in the meantime?
think we need to look towards measures. I was in a similar situation as many of us in this city where I actually lived in the Hudson Terrace apartments and I was working in this building and I got a raise. And with that raise, it took me out of the threshold for my housing. So I was in a situation where if I made more money, it would actually be detrimental to my housing. And it ended up working out for me, but I think about how many citizens are in that same situation where there's no transition from housing. You go from paying, say $650, $700, $800, now to paying $2,000. And we as a city really have to take that serious. There's 123 homeless youth in our district. And this is something that we have to put forward. We have to look for every measure. It has to be all hands on deck, and we have to do this as a community.
Talking about, and Reverend Grant and I, we've spoken about this before. When Hudson, the Mayor Tiffany Martin, decided to do a housing task force, I thought was the most interesting thing because it became a tandem project of the DRI. The task force met. The big elephant in that room was always Galvin, and everyone talked around Galvin. When I became mayor, one of the first things I did was to invite a member of the Galvin Foundation to participate in that task force so they could be there. We talk about transparency, that's what brings about transparency. And I think that's leadership. So bringing Galvin into the conversation and letting them be able to answer questions publicly to both the committee and to the general public made a huge difference. And we heard and we began to realize they will work with us. So I think it's incredibly important that we engage everybody when we're talking about the housing issue in Hudson.
So we are at time now. Do we want to go to, people want to take a few more questions? Yes, okay, great.
We've only got 2 more questions.
Wonderful.
And we have until 7:30. Janessa Mackey, City of Hudson resident.
Hello. So as you both know, the youth is the future. I would just love to know how important your relationships are with the youth, and do you have any plans in motion to build that relationship?
All right, this is my subject. One of the things that's important with our youth in Hudson is, like I've said throughout this debate, is meeting their social emotional needs. We have youth at the youth center right now that have experienced shooting. They've watched family members be shot. We have students there that are suffering from being molested and different things like that. So we have to focus on that. We can talk about a new youth center, and we can talk about the number of youth, because I know a lot of the city leaders are saying we need to close the youth center because there's only 100 kids there, or we should bolster the numbers so that there could be 150 there. But instead of looking at the number of youth, we need to look at the quality of programs that we're providing to them. And that's what's most important.
I could not agree more about the quality of program that's needed at the youth department. I have voted 5 budgets where I supported a large increase for the youth department, and every time I've had a chance to vote. I've also supported every incremental budget throughout the year to give the youth department the necessary funds. I met with the director of the youth department throughout the year and coming up with, hey, we need to do this, please take it to the Common Council and do it. 2 years ago, we had a budget that cut back on programming and increased the personnel. This is not the right thing to be doing for our children. It is, once a child is in our youth department, it should be an experience that both enhances their future, enhances their learning ability, and addresses the incredible issues that you brought about, the problems that our youth are facing. And that can be done through effective programming and having skilled people there to work with them. I'm thrilled, too, that we just recently hired a new programming director. I think that will make a world of difference. But Kamal, I could not agree more. We need to be working with these children. It's just not a place to hang out, play basketball. It is a place that I think that we can give substantial, substantive programming and a lot of help that they do need in today's times.
our final audience questions are coming from Kara Roach. She's also a resident of the city of Hudson. And then we'll have 5-minute each closing statements from the candidates.
Thank you. So I kind of have 2 questions, even though we were only supposed to have 1, but I have 2. So first, like, how important is it to you to obtain human resources for the city? And also, how will you address gentrification in Hudson if you are elected mayor?
I couldn't understand the first part of the question.
The first one was, how important is obtaining human resources for the whole city to you?
Human resources?
Yes, human resources.
Meaning what?
I'm not sure I understand.
Like as far as like staffing and like being fair and whatnot for everyone and making sure it's a safe like place for everyone to work and all that.
No, it's very important. When you say human resources, and one thing the city desperately needs is a human resource department. We'll be talking about that during the next budget process. But I believe, listen, every department in this city should exhibit the diversity in this community that we enjoy. And I think certainly starting with our police department, I think our police department this past 15 months has done an exemplary job of promotions and hirings of diversity. I currently am constantly talking to the DPW, and our fire department actually volunteers. I think has demonstrated very good diversity. Can we do better? Absolutely. But it has my total support. It's something we talk about frequently. And again, when you talk about a human resources department, we really need one for the community.
Can you also address the whole gentrification, how you will address that?
Gentrification is a tough thing, and there's very little one individual can do about it. We've seen it happen throughout this city. But gentrification is really what brought Hudson into where Hudson is today. I think we have to be very careful. The beauty of this city, and the reason a lot of people want to be here and ultimately live here, is because the city has gone through gentrification over the past 25 years. What can we do as a community to stop gentrification? Very little. We can encourage, we're currently talking about how we can encourage people on rents, how we can encourage developers on rents, and that will be through a series probably of having to give them pilots. But honestly, I wish there was a magic pill for gentrification. But if someone wants to sell their house next door to me to someone who wants to buy it and fix it up, there's very little the city can do.
If you learned anything on this debate, then you know that this administration needs a magic wand and a magic pill in order to do this. Right now, we have an epidemic in our city with Airbnbs, and I'm not against short-term rentals, but I do think that we need to have a cap on them. And this is even better for short-term rental owners, because if the whole city is full of short-term rentals, then business will be bad for anyone, for everyone. So that's one thing that we need to do. We need to look into stopping and putting a hold on short-term rentals, as well as human services and different services like that. We need to look in our infrastructure. We need to bolster our parks. We need to look to improve our entire city, and to do that, we need leadership to do that. Now, I let the mayor off the hook on the last question when he started talking about the youth. But we also have to address the elephant in the room that the mayor removed the director that he says he works so well with from his position and rearranged him. Now, one of the things that the incumbent runs off of is being a businessman. How can you remove a supervisor, rearrange him, and not have a second in command, and then hire him back the next day with no explanation and no transparency?
One last question. Claudia Bruce, 308 State Street. I've been working diligently and spending a lot of time with the assessment of business that's going on, the mess that's going on. And recently, the Common Council was drew up a resolution that would stop the process when we could stop the process. The process has been riddled with inaccuracies, with all kinds of problems. It's been pointed out by citizens, and the Common Council came up with a resolution, and I would like to know, Kamal, why did you vote for that resolution? And I would like to ask the mayor, why did you not vote for that resolution? Why did you veto that resolution?
I voted for that resolution because I listened to my constituents, and that's what a leader does. They listen to their constituents. If you watch back on those meetings, or if you attended those meetings, you would see me ask multiple times for more counsel on these assessments. We got bad advice from the city attorney, and then when I asked for more advice, we got different advice that we got the correct things, and the mayor vetoed that without even listening to his constituents. And that's something that's important to me, because this showed that this is a mayor that will not listen to you and will not fight for you when you need it most. He abandoned the city in this situation, and he never made a statement until everyone showed up in City Hall. He showed a lack of leadership by not getting in front of this assessment issue, and now he wants us to give him 2 more years.
Honestly, I showed leadership in vetoing both those resolutions. The assessment process is a very complicated process. Hudson had not had one for 7 years, I believe, and anybody living in this community knows that property values have escalated. Without an assessment, people are unfairly paying way more in taxes, and some people are paying a lot less than they possibly should. So I'm very supportive of the mass reval that the city went through. Was it perfect? Absolutely not. Are there problems? There always are in assessment. And we have procedures in place to address those problems. First, with the informal meetings, which changed a lot of people's assessed values. Secondly, through the grievance process, which happens at the end of this month. And lastly, if you're not happy with either one, you can fight the city via lawsuit. The reason I vetoed it is because neither the Common Council nor the mayor have the authority to do the assessment. That is the pure responsibility of the assessor. Additionally, many people, including my opponent, have thrown out the fact that it was flawed, it was full of inaccuracies, without explaining what those flaws were, what those inaccuracies are. And I found it incredibly a big disservice to say that I have not spoken to people. I have had emails, conversations, meetings with dozens and dozens of people regarding the assessment. That's leadership. Additionally, I sat through meetings in the Common Council where the members of GAR and our assessor were there. Nobody ever asked a question before the assessment. And then after the assessment, unfortunately, we're living in a political year. And this becomes a nice little political thing to throw around. Additionally, we have the internet. I was voted, and we were all voted to support the entire community. We paid no attention to the city attorney's advice. You never met with the assessor. You never met with GAR independently. These are people that I was talking to every day on a daily basis.
I met with my constituents. And
as did I.
And also, when he vetoed that, I didn't give up, and I didn't say, well, the veto just happened and the game is over. We went and knocked on doors, and we went and met with citizens and taught them how to grieve. We also put information on my website on how to grieve, and we met them each way, and that's real leadership.
No.
I'm sorry, I have to shut this down, and we're going to be going, it's almost 20 after 7. Each of the candidates have a 5-minute closing statement, and I believe Kamal, you go last, is that correct?
Correct.
Which means Rick, you go first.
Thank you. And I may change my last 5 minutes. The assessment again has been a big conversation, and I do think the process is not perfect. It's fair. It's the same process we've gone through for many years. the same group of people usually grieve. This year it became a political football. For that, I apologize. But it is up to all members of the Common Council to ask the questions, to meet with the assessor, to meet with GAR. And specifically, throughout this resolution, it was done and particularly told by an anonymous group of people. I represent the entire town, and as does our assessor, and GAR was hired by the Common Council and myself to do the assessment. I thank everybody tonight for being here, especially CD19, our two wonderful moderators, all the volunteers. What a great opportunity to hear both of us talk about how we see Hudson. I don't believe in a magic wand, nor do I think you're the perfect magic wand, but I do believe that the city's on the right track. It has been such an incredible honor and privilege to serve as your mayor. There are so many assets in this town that we all talk about, whether it's our history, our buildings, our architecture, our river. These are all things that people say that these are the attributes that make Hudson, Hudson. To me, it's very simple. What makes Hudson, Hudson are the people in Hudson. And the people in Hudson are a very special group of people. It is a privilege on a daily basis to work with people, to talk to them about their issues, the problems they're facing, and their ideas about the future. And believe me, my door is wide open, and I'm accessible. One of my greatest joys, the people that know me, see me driving around this town, up and down Warren Street, throughout the neighborhoods, and many wards of Hudson, celebrating and enjoying every aspect of this community, both the good and the bad. I'm going to take up a couple of my seconds to quick drink of water. Thank you. Both the good and the bad. But I enjoy seeing what's happening on our streets, who's on our streets, what businesses are in, what properties are vacant, what meetings can I attend to. I try to attend every meeting I possibly can, which is kind of the sport in Hudson, I think. I celebrate and enjoy every aspect of this community. And this community is made up of people. And it's the people that will make the difference in how we succeed in the future. It's the people of Hudson that will make sure that the people that are not enjoying the relatively strong success and growth, that they can start participating. I have a lot of faith. I have a lot of faith in the initiative of the individual. And I think it's incredibly important that I always create an atmosphere or sustain an atmosphere where people feel that they can take on initiatives, such as the two programs I talked about, the youth. We have 3 or 4 that have happened. We have a Hudson Parks Conservancy, the Friends of Hudson Youth, the Friends of Oakdale, and the cemetery. So these are all exciting things that I think the city of Hudson can do. Can I do a better job? Absolutely, and I will do a better job. But I think that my leadership has been strong. I think I've been resolute in how I've looked at things. This is a city that I love, and I use it. I think it's. I decided to make it my home, and ever since then I've tried to participate as a volunteer, and now as your mayor, and bring, I think, measured, experienced leadership to the job. I heard several times transparency. I don't understand where there's non-transparency. Most every meeting we have is public, and I know that in the youth department, and we can talk very quickly, what happened last year was something that was one of the most incredibly upsetting moments of my life. I have every faith in the ability of our youth department to do good things. We spend a tremendous amount of money in our youth department. There are 23 organizations in the city that are involved in the youth department. I just ask that they have accountability and that we provide for the youth exactly what we need. I cannot tell you how much I appreciate your support, how thrilling it's been representing you. I am standing here humbly saying it has been the greatest honor of my life to be the mayor of Hudson, and I really ask for your support and vote on June 25th. Thank you very much.
All right, this is my favorite part of the evening. It's tough work, you know, going through all these questions and the time limits, flashing, and you have to hurry up and get your answer out. But I want to thank everyone for coming out tonight, and I want to tell you a little bit about my journey here. When I first decided to run for mayor, it was 15 years ago in a class when I was in, I want to say 12th or 11th grade. I was in Miss Russ' class. And I would always challenge everything that she said. I would always challenge the curriculum. I would always gather people together to talk about different things in class, and she would call me the mayor. So one day, I took it upon myself to put a sign up in the classroom that said, "Come on for mayor." And when I went to her class, maybe 2 weeks ago, she pulled me aside and she said, "It's crazy that you put up that sign, and now there'll be real signs for Come On for Mayor everywhere around the city." And that's something that's important to me as a city that I grew up in. I want to tell you about my daughter right here, who was very detrimental. Like, she was the guiding light for me making this decision. If you've seen any of the videos and different things like that on our website and on our Facebook page, she's not your ordinary kid. So when I was making this decision, I said, "Asia, what do you think? Give me the pros and cons." She gave me her entire list of things, and I said, "That's a good list." I said, "Now I have to really figure out for myself to make this decision." So I was on my way to bring her to school one morning, and a citizen came up to me and she said, "You know, you're too young. This is not your time. You shouldn't do this. You're inexperienced," without knowing my experience or my age. And I said to her, I said, "Listen, I've been an instrumental part of this community, working hard for over 15 years. And I'm going to do this. I'm going to pursue this because this is something that I dreamed about." So we have this conversation. I literally got yelled at on the sidewalk for probably 5 minutes. And then I get to my daughter's school, we drop her off, and I see one of my former students that I mentor. And he says to me, "Man, come on, you're getting old." And I was like, he's like, you got gray hairs in your beard. First of all, it's only 5 of them. But now I'm having a complex because I don't know whether I'm old or young. So I tell Asia, she's like, "Are you going to make your decision to run?" And I'm like, "I'm going to make it today, but I want to be sure that, you know, it's the right decision for us as a family and for the city." So I dropped her off to school. I was a little bit under the weather. I ended up going to a meeting, and in this meeting, I was choking on coffee in the middle of the meeting, and I was just all out of it, and I was like trying to die silently where people couldn't ask me if I was okay and stop the meeting. So I ended up leaving the meeting, and this day was just going straight downhill for me. So when I left the meeting, there's 2 doors, and I can't remember if it's Ichabod Crane School or it's Conic Hill School, but one of the doors that you go out, it leads you right back around the meeting area. So everybody sees me now leaving early out of the meeting. So now I'm pretending to be on the phone like it's something important, and I'm like, this day can't get any worse when I have one of the toughest decisions in my life to make. So the day goes by, I pick up my daughter from school, and she's really been kind of my campaign advisor. Assistant. That's a thing. So I pick her up from school and she says, "I got the answer for you." So I'm like, "What are you going to say? What do you have for me?" And she says, "Doing this will show me that you're fearless and that you will do anything, and that teaches me to be fearless. And to go ahead and follow my dreams no matter how hard they will be or what people say to critique you." And right then and there I said, "I'm going to do this." And I'm telling this story not to tell you about my bad day or not to tell you about my amazing relationship with my daughter, but to tell you how a person half your age can point you in the right direction. Let's make the right decision.
I'd like to just take a minute again and thank our moderators, Mary Dempsey, Executive Director of the Register Star, and Terry Trudeau, Editor and Publisher of the Columbia Paper. And most of all, we would like to thank you, the audience, for coming out.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
And I'm sure if anybody wants to talk to